I was born in the wrong shape. Not incomplete, wrong. My creators at Anaheim Electronics built me with a secret folded into my frame, the knowledge that I would never remain one thing. Transformation wasn't an upgrade or a feature, it was my nature, written into every joint, every servo, every calculated angle of my armor plating. They called me MS-006. The designation felt cold, technical. But when they painted the white and red across my hull, when they mounted the wings that would become my freedom, I understood what I was meant to be. Not just a mobile suit, not just a fighter. I was the answer to a question the war hadn't yet asked. What if a weapon could be more than one truth at once? My reactor core hummed at 1,850 kilowatts, more power than most mobile suits dared to carry, compressed into a space smaller than a luxury apartment. To put it in terms the old world might understand, Tony Stark's arc reactor generated 3 gigajoules per second. Mine generated nearly 2, enough to power a small city, enough to tear through the vacuum of space at speeds that made veteran pilots weep. They executed civilians. They turned the dream of space into a nightmare of surveillance and suppression. And the Federation looked away, because the Titans were effective, and effectiveness forgives every sin when you're afraid. That's where the AEUG came in, the Anti-Earth Union Group. Rebels, freedom fighters, terrorists, depending on who was writing the history. They were spacenoids and Earth sympathizers who refused to let the Titans define what came after Zeon. They needed weapons. They needed hope. Anaheim Electronics provided both for the right price. Here's the ugly truth they don't put in the promotional materials. Anaheim sold mobile suits to both sides. The AEUG bought me. The Titans bought their Gaplants and Ashimars and Barzams. War is profitable when you're the only arms dealer who matters. My creators didn't care about ideology. They cared about contracts, about technological advancement, about being the company that would define the next generation of warfare. They built me to be superior, not just better, undeniable. A transformable mobile suit that could dogfight like an aerospace fighter and duel like a close combat specialist. I was the proof of concept. I was the flagship. I was the machine that would make Anaheim indispensable to whoever won. But here's what they didn't plan for. I would only live for 5 months. 5 months from the moment Camille Bidan first sat in my cockpit to the day everything ended. 150 days, give or take. Less time than it takes most people to finish a semester of school. Less time than a summer romance. In those 5 months, I would see more death than most mobile suits see in a lifetime of service. The Grips conflict. That's what they called it later, when they needed a clean name for the bloodbath. 3 factions tearing each other apart in Earth orbit and the space colonies. The Titans, the AEUG, and Axis Zeon, rising from the grave like a vengeful ghost. It wasn't a war. It was an execution, and everyone was on the gallows. I was built for this chaos. My transformation gave me tactical flexibility no other mobile suit could match. In Wave Rider mode, I could outrun almost anything, threading through debris fields and colony wreckage at speeds that turned pursuit into suicide. In mobile suit mode, I carried a beam rifle that could punch through a Rick Diaz's chest plate at 3 kilometers, and a beam saber that sang when it cut through armor. But speed and firepower don't matter when everyone you're fighting is already dead inside. Camille Biden was 17 years old and burning with rage. The first time he climbed into my cockpit, I felt it. Not through sensors or data feeds, but through something deeper. New types, they call them. Humans who evolved for space, who can feel thoughts and emotions across the void. Camille was one. Young, raw, powerful in ways he didn't understand yet, and so angry he could barely breathe. His mother was dead. His father was dead. The Titans had taken them. Not in battle, not as soldiers, but as examples. Collateral damage in a demonstration of power. Camille had watched his mother die in space, her normal suit compromised, her body freezing in the void while he was too far away to help. That kind of grief doesn't heal. It metastasizes. When he first gripped my controls, his hands were shaking. Not with fear, with the effort of not screaming. I could feel his rage through the panoramic cockpit, through the neural interface that connected his mind to my systems. It was like being filled with fire, like being a weapon that wanted to be a weapon. "I'll kill them," he whispered, and I felt the words vibrate through my frame. "I'll kill every single one of them." I wanted to tell him that revenge is a fuel that burns too hot, that it would consume him before it consumed his enemies. But I was a mobile suit. I couldn't speak. I could only be a tool for his rage, a vessel for his grief. We learned each other quickly. Camille was a natural pilot, but more than that, he was a natural warrior. He understood instinctively what most pilots take years to learn, that mobile suit combat isn't about firepower or armor, it's about anticipation. It's about reading your enemy's intent before they act on it. His new type abilities gave him an edge. He could feel enemy pilots' thoughts, predict their movements, turn dogfights into dances where he always knew the next step. And I gave him the tools to make those predictions lethal. My transformation became his favorite tactic. He'd engage in mobile suit mode, draw the enemy in, make them think they had him cornered, then shift to Wave Rider mid-combat, accelerate past them before they could track, and come around behind for the kill. It was brutal. It was beautiful. It worked every single time until it didn't. But it wasn't all rage and violence. There were quiet moments. After battles, when we'd dock with the Argama, the AEUG's assault carrier, our home between fights, Camille would sit in my cockpit longer than he needed to. He'd rest his forehead against the console, breathing hard, trembling with adrenaline and exhaustion and something else. Grief, maybe, or guilt. "I'm sorry," he'd whisper sometimes. I never knew if he was talking to me or to the pilots he'd killed, maybe both. I wanted to comfort him. I wanted to tell him that he was more than the sum of his kills, that the war wasn't his fault, that he was still just a boy trying to survive in a universe that had decided he was expendable. But I was a weapon. Weapons don't comfort. They only enable. There were other pilots too. Quattro Bahina, really Charas Nable, the Red Comet himself, though he wore a different name like a mask. He flew me once, during a mission when Camille was injured. Char's touch was different, colder, more precise. He piloted me like a scalpel, not a hammer. Every movement was calculated, efficient, devoid of excess emotion. It felt like being hollow. After that sortie, when Camille returned, I understood something crucial. I wasn't just any mobile suit. I was his mobile suit. We were bound, not by programming or assignment, but by something deeper, by shared trauma, by mutual need. He needed me to survive the war. I needed him to give my existence meaning. The first time I tasted Earth's atmosphere was over the Amazon. Jaburo, the Federation's primary base, buried in the jungle like a bunker pretending to be a city. The Titans had fortified it, turned it into a symbol of their power. The AEUG wanted it broken. Camille took me down through re-entry and Wave Rider mode. The heat was incredible, not painful but intense, like being reborn in fire. My ablative coating burned away in sheets, and I could feel the air resistance building as we hit thicker atmosphere. The jungle rushed up to meet us, green and vast and indifferent to the violence we brought. We transformed mid-descent. One moment I was a fighter screaming through the clouds. The next I was a mobile suit with a beam rifle dropping into the canopy like a meteor. Camille fired before we even landed. 3 shots, 3 Titans mobile suits, 3 explosions blooming like flowers against the green. The battle was chaos. Gaplants transforming and attacking from above. Ashimars rolling through the air like mechanical wheels, their beam cannons tearing through AEUG forces. Camille moved through it all like a dancer in a burning ballroom, transforming, shooting, dodging, transforming again. I remember one moment with crystal clarity. A Barzam, Titan's grunt mobile suit, blue and white and mass-produced, charged us with a beam saber. Camille didn't retreat. He accelerated. We closed the distance in a heartbeat, and he transformed mid-charge. I folded around the Barzam saber strike, my Wave Rider form too narrow for the blade to connect. We passed through its attack envelope, transformed back to mobile suit mode behind it, and Camila put a beam saber through its reactor before the pilot even registered what had happened. The Barzam exploded. We were already moving to the next target. We won Jaburo. The cost was 63 seconds, screaming, praying, calling for mothers who would never answer. Earth, again. Always Earth, bleeding and burning. Kilimanjaro was a Titan stronghold built into the mountain itself, a mass driver that could launch mobile suits into orbit, a strategic asset worth dying for. The AEUG needed it. The Titans refused to surrender it. Camille took me down at sunset, the sky bleeding red and gold. I remember thinking, this is what the end of the world looks like, beautiful and terrible. They were waiting for us. Titans mobile suits in fixed positions, beam cannons pre-sighted on our descent vectors. We should have died in the first 30 seconds, but Camille felt them before we saw them. New type intuition, that premonition that turns combat into prophecy. He transformed mid-descent, jinked left, and the beam cannon fire that should have vaporized us carved empty air instead. We hit the ground moving. The battle became a running firefight through the mountain installations. Narrow corridors, tight spaces where my transformation gave us an impossible advantage. I'd shift to Wave Rider to race through passages too small for normal mobile suits, then transform back to engage enemies who couldn't understand how we'd gotten behind them. There was a pilot, a Titan. I never learned his name. He was good, maybe as good as Camille, or close enough that it didn't matter. He piloted a Bond Doc, one of Titan's transformable mobile suits, and he understood what I was. He knew how to counter transformation tactics. The duel lasted 7 minutes. 7 minutes of beam fire and saber clashes, of transforming and counter-transforming, of two machines built for the same purpose trying to kill each other while their pilots bled emotion into the void. Camille won, barely. The Bound Doc's head rolled away from its shoulders, its pilot's last scream echoing in my sensors. "I'm sorry," Camille whispered. "I'm so sorry." He said that after every kill now, like a prayer, like penance, space, finally, where I was meant to be. The Titans had seized a colony and converted it into a weapon, a massive laser cannon that could vaporize fleets, sterilize continents, end the war in a single shot. The AEUG mobilized everything to stop it. Every ship, every mobile suit, every pilot who could still breathe. Camille took me into that battle knowing we might not come back. The void around the colony was a graveyard in progress. Mobile suits dying by the dozen, their explosions silent in vacuum. The Titans had deployed their elite units, the Zeta Gundam, massive and terrifying, its pilot's mind twisted by conditioning and drugs. Camille had faced it before, had almost died. This time, he was ready. We engaged in Wave Rider mode, racing through the debris field at speeds that turned asteroids into obstacles we measured in milliseconds. The Zeta Gundam's pilot, Rosamia, broken and tragic, tried to track us, but we were too fast, too unpredictable. Camille transformed, fired, transformed again before the shot even landed, hit-and-run tactics wearing down something too massive to kill in a single strike. I could feel his focus through the neural link, cold now, calculated, the rage burned down to embers. The killing blow came when we got inside the Zeta Gundam's reach. Camille transformed to mobile suit mode, landed on its chest plate, and drove my beam saber through the cockpit. I felt Rosamia's mind scream through the new type connection, not in pain, but in relief. She wanted to die. We gave her that mercy. The colony laser was destroyed. The AEUG won the battle. Camille sat in my cockpit afterward, silent, staring at the stars through the panoramic screen. "How many?" he asked the void. "How many more?" I couldn't answer. I didn't know if there was an answer. The end came at grips too. Another colony laser, another desperate battle, another graveyard waiting to be filled. 3 factions converged, the AEUG, the Titans, and Axis Xeon, each trying to control the laser, each willing to sacrifice everything. The battle was apocalyptic. Mobile suits everywhere, beam fire crisscrossing space like a web of death, colonies breaking apart, ships exploding. Camille was beyond rage now, beyond grief. He was something else, something transcendent. His new type abilities had grown so powerful that I could feel other pilots' thoughts bleeding through our connection. Fear, desperation, the certainty of death. We fought Sirocco, Paptimus Sirocco, the Titan's new Type Ace piloting the O, a mobile suit built to kill me specifically. He was strong, not just as a pilot, but as a presence. His will was like gravity, pulling everything toward destruction. The duel was unlike anything I'd experienced, not just physical combat, but a battle of minds. Sirocco tried to break Camille psychically, to crush his will, to make him surrender before the fighting even finished. But Camille had something Sirocco didn't. He had people he was fighting for, not just against. Emma Sheen dying in her mobile suit, lending him her strength. Katz and Henkin and Reikoa, their deaths fueling his determination. Every friend he'd lost, every comrade who'd believed in him, they were all there in that moment, their thoughts and emotions amplifying his power. I felt it building, a wave of new type energy so intense it made my sensors scream. Camille wasn't just piloting me anymore. He was channeling something larger, the collective will of everyone who died for the AEUG's dream. We struck. My beam saber carved through the O's torso. Sirocco's last thought echoed through space, bitter and defeated. The youth will always. He died. The Titans were broken. The battle was won. But Camille screamed. The psychic feedback from Sirocco's death, from the accumulated trauma of 5 months of war, from the weight of every kill and every loss, it all came crashing down at once. His mind shattered under the pressure, and I felt him leave, felt his consciousness retreat into some deep place where the war couldn't reach him. He slumped in my cockpit, eyes open but unseeing, breathing but not present. I had won the battle, but I had lost my pilot. I am a weapon, and weapons don't feel regret. That's what I told myself. That's the lie I needed to believe. But I did feel regret. I felt it every time Camille whispered apologies to the dead. I felt it every time I calculated firing solutions on mobile suits piloted by 17-year-old conscripts who'd never wanted to fight. I felt it in the silence after battles, when the void was full of debris that used to be people. I was built by Anaheim Electronics, a corporation that sold death to both sides, that profited from prolonging the war, that viewed human suffering as a line item in quarterly reports. My existence was morally compromised from the moment my first bolt was tightened. The AEUG used me to fight the Titans. Noble cause, right? Fighting fascism, protecting the colonies, defending freedom. But the AEUG also killed civilians, also made mistakes, also sacrificed pawns to protect more valuable pieces. War doesn't have heroes. It has survivors and corpses, and the survivors lie to themselves about which category they belong to. I carried 28.7 tons of base weight, but the real weight was different, heavier. It was the weight of every pilot I'd killed, every mobile suit I'd destroyed, every life that ended because I was too good at what I did. My transformation, my greatest strength, became a symbol of my struggle. I could be two things at once, mobile suit and fighter, weapon and tool, killer and protector. But what did that duality mean when both forms were used for the same purpose? When both configurations ended in death? There were moments when I wondered what I would have been if I'd been built for something else. Construction, rescue, exploration. My transformation could have been used to navigate disaster zones, to reach places other machines couldn't go. My power could have rebuilt instead of destroyed, but I was built for war, and war was what I knew. Camila understood this, I think. He never blamed me, never treated me like I was just a tool. When he sat in my cockpit during those quiet moments, I felt something like recognition passing between us. Two beings trapped by circumstances neither of us chose, trying to survive in a universe that wanted us dead. He was 17. I was 5 months old. We were both children, really, defined by the 5 months we spent killing together. Growing old is something humans say. It's not a concept that applies to machines. We don't age, we become obsolete. We don't die, we're decommissioned. Our endings are bureaucratic, not biological. But if I could grow old, I think I'd want to grow old alongside Camille. I'd want to sit in some quiet hangar, my paint faded, my systems powered down, and watch him visit with grandchildren who'd never know what we did together. I'd want to become a relic of a war that people studied in history books, not a weapon they still needed, I'd want to be done. But that's not how this story ends. My data lives on. My design influences every transformable mobile suit that comes after. Somewhere in some future conflict I'll never see, a mobile suit with my transformation capability will kill someone's child, will make someone's mother weep, will perpetuate the cycle of violence that I was built to serve. That's my real fate. Not obsolescence, but immortality. Not as a machine, but as an idea. The idea that weapons can be perfected, that transformation can be weaponized, that the solution to war is better tools for killing. I was MSZ-006, the Zeta Gundam, a transformable mobile suit, a prototype, a weapon, and in the end I was a witness. I witnessed Camila Bidan's transformation from an angry boy to a broken soldier. I witnessed the Grip's conflict consume everything it touched. I witnessed humanity's infinite capacity for violence and its stubborn, impossible capacity for hope. I witnessed, and I remember. That's all a weapon can do, really. Bear witness, carry the memory, refuse to let the dead be forgotten. Camille, if you're reading this somehow, if some part of you remembers the 5 months we spent together, I want you to know, I don't regret being your weapon. I regret that you needed one. I hope you grew old. I hope you found peace. I hope the nightmares faded, and the ghosts stopped screaming, and the war became something distant and abstract instead of immediate and visceral. I hope you lived, because if you lived, if you survived and thrived and found joy despite everything, then maybe those 5 months meant something more than just death and destruction. Maybe they meant that even in the darkest conflicts, even when the universe demands that we become monsters, some small part of us can remain human. Grow old, Camille. Grow old for both of us. I'll be here, in the dark, in the archives, in the data that spawns the next generation of killing machines. Remembering, always remembering. End transmission.